And we're live.
I think so.
I think this is live. This is what live feels like. Christy, is there anyone here? Oh my God, there's people. They pop up on the side. I'm sorry. I have boomer tendencies with technology at this point. Hey, Ryan. Hey, Matt. Everyone, thank you so much for showing up. We're going to wait one more minute just to make sure people who are running a little bit late have time to join us. Feel free to use the chat because we see the messages, and this is just like a Twitch stream, but we're not playing a game. We're talking about our careers, I guess. Also a type of game.
Yeah.
Feel free to use the chat. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Jump in and let us know what stage of your career you're at. Hey, Matt. Nothing much, there's not a lot happening. We're just working in digital. Very quiet day on the internet. Nothing's happening. Certainly nothing in Texas or at SCOTUS.
No, nothing at all.
Nothing at all. All right, Amanda, are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
Are we going to do this?
I think so.
I think I'm just going to kick it off with an intro of myself.
Okay.
You can intro yourself. And then we'll ask each other questions and fill up time, and people will ask us questions.
Sounds great. Let's go.
Great. Wait, pause. Do you want to go first? I want to hold space.
Please. Thank
you. I also did the skimming, Matt. Hey, my name is Stefan Smith. I am a historian, a storyteller, an academic. I worked for a TV show. I've worked for libraries. I've done digital on congressional campaigns, Senate primaries, presidential races in the states. And I'm currently Deputy Chief Digital Engagement Officer for the ACLU, which is a super wonderful job that I'm very happy about. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. Went to Brown for undergraduate, went to USC for the master's degree. I'm super excited to be here with y'all. Hope this can be super interactive. Hope you can use the chat. Want to make sure this is bi-directional as possible. And in the interest of transparency, I know Amanda from a job we used to work together or whatever. Which USC? Trojans, not Gamecocks. Anyway, Amanda, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I am not a historian. I actually studied.
You know what? No one can be perfect.
No one's perfect, least of all me. I actually studied biology, had a totally different life before this, and got into politics with the 2016 campaign. I was pretty angry about what's happening. And since then, I've worked in New Mexico, which is where I got to work with Stefan, doing digital stuff there, and then worked with a bunch of different congressional races across the country also. And then now I am the digital director at Senate Majority PAC, so working kind of on the IE side now, doing a lot of paid digital across Senate battleground states, and having a lot of fun with that.
That's so cool. The IE side sounds so interesting to me. Can I ask you a question of how are you thinking? You said you started out as a biology major. So I guess the easiest question is how did you get from there to here? You're in any ranking of the top ranked digital people who have the most quote unquote power on the left or in the Democratic Party has to include you now as director of S&P, right? That's a huge job. That's huge. How did you get from biology major to head of one of the largest, on the PAC side to protect our majority? How'd you get there?
Well, it's a ride, so buckle up. Yeah, I went to Stanford and went to go work at a startup because that's exactly what you normally do. I literally, when I say study biology, not even I don't know, I was doing anthropology, biology. So I was going and spending my summers not even in this country, digging in random corners of the world, which has not been that helpful to me now. But I went to go do this work at the startup, and I ran our data and analytics department for several years. And then startups tend to kind of belly up sometimes, and this was no exception. So I was kind of not sure what to do. I did some stuff with nonprofits around San Francisco, which is where I'm from. And that was kind of my first step into digital. I was doing a lot of like online engagement, community building stuff. And then, yeah, I was, it was middle of 2016 and I was just like, I'll go pitch in for a couple of months. I'll see if I like it. Maybe I won't, maybe I will, but I'll
Yeah.
help out and that'll be great. And then I'll come back and, figure out my next step. And I was doing field in 2016. It was just like,
Yeah.
let's just jump in. Um, and I really liked it. And so I
Wait,
decided I
so
was
your
gonna.
first job in politics was field?
Mhm.
Wow, I love that. So many people start out in field, but they sometimes hit like a sort of barrier to transition from field to other parts of the campaign, which is like really frustrating for them. Can you talk a little bit about like, all right, so you're in field, spoiler alert, we lost 2016. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, it was rough. It's fine. I'm over it. I'm not over it. And so like, how do you go then from field to digital?
Well, I actually feel like field to digital is a pretty natural thing. It's all about talking to voters. That's what you're doing
Mhm.
in in both cases. It's just on like at their door or at their digital door, which is on their computer or phone. Um, so I mean, I took a little detour into fundraising. That's kind of how I ended up in New Mexico, which is where we work together. Um, and then as I was doing fundraising, I was kind of involved in the digital fundraising piece. So got really involved in the email program and kind of all that stuff. And that was then moved over into other parts of digital. And I mean, Stefan knows this, but moving more into like organic social and making memes and graphics and
I mean,
videos.
you make a really good
I'm
meme.
like
Like,
a
let's be
meme
honest.
meme.
Like, you make a mean meme.
I
I
do.
don't know if you've seen her work. We'll pimp our Twitter accounts at the end of this, but like, she makes a good meme. Um, that's such an interesting path. Mine was obviously a little bit more circuitous. I think the way I started out was, um, I've always been like really interested in digital. I was like, hanging out in AOL chat rooms like when I was 10, 11. Like I was big in the fandoms. I spent a lot of time in the Spice Girls chat room, in the Hanson chat room, in the Backstreet Boys chat room. Yes, Backstreet Boys not in sync. And so, oh, that's wonderful. And so we did a lot of that work and then just like vibing. I had so many of my most pivotal moments in my life. Like I came out for the first time on my live journal when I was 17, which is probably the most like dated digital reference outside of a MySpace page. And so, but I really wanted to go and be an academic. I was like, all right, I'll go be serious. I'll go be Dr. Stefan Smith and get this PhD. Um, so I graduated college, moved to Los Angeles and really got into teaching and I like really loved it. And like talking and realizing that it's about storytelling, right? Like history is not just dates and figures, it's about the narratives we put together and how we shape information and how we consume large amounts of primary sources and figure out what is worth like sharing and on to the next generation from that information. It's a lot of really sort of heady stuff and I like really enjoyed reading and thinking and having a life of the mind, but then I was having this moment around 2014, 2013, um, where I was like really wondering what the point was. Cause like only like 5 or 6 people are going to read your dissertation. And I'm like, am I making the big enough difference? Am I out in the world? So I actually left my PhD program with 1 year left and got a job working for Drunk History on Comedy Central and help them tell more stories. So pitch them a bunch of stories that were half men, half women, pitch them stories that were half people of color, half white people, like really trying to get them to be more diverse and like really try and tell really good stories. And then wound up as their first on-set digital person. And so did that. That was super dope. And then moved on to Hillary Clinton. And I think realizing after Hillary that like one, I really, really like digital politics. I was deputy digital director in Michigan for her, working on content specifically. I really, really enjoyed content. I enjoyed making stuff. I enjoyed telling stories online. I enjoyed being meaningful and doing that work. And then the second point was realizing that this was like a major fight against Trump and Trumpism, and it was time to go. So anyway, from 2016 to now, I just did 4 or 5 campaigns in a row. So it was Marty Walsh in Boston's mayoral race, Senator Martin Heinrich's primary, digital director for the the Democrats of New Mexico, online engagement director for Pete Buttigieg, digital campaign director for Reform, which is a prison reform alliance campaign founded by Jay-Z and Van Jones and a bunch of them, helping them think about mobilization around incarceration. And now I'm at the ACLU trying to figure out and answer this question of like, how do you keep people engaged? How do you move them through the pipeline? How do you get them to take an action? And how can we hopefully marshal some of these online supporters to try and change the world? So anyway, so that's like the journey. Let's look a little bit in the chat box. Amanda, do you want to read Isabel's question?
Yes. So Isabel wants to know any advice that we have, good places to start and learn to break into digital if you haven't been doing digital in the past. I mean, I think this is gonna be a long answer. There's a lot of great places to start. I think digital is so unique in that you can do a lot of it without actually having a digital job. It's like hard to learn call time if you're not doing call time, but you can learn a lot of the digital skills without actually doing it. So, I mean, your own social media is probably the first and best place to start. Just post stuff, see what works, kind of think about your engagement. I mean, honestly, I would get into Photoshop and video editing, learn some animation, and those are like all things you can do on YouTube. That was where I learned. Like I never took a course. Like I just downloaded Photoshop. They have some tutorials, which are like workbooks. Like you literally sit there and it's like make a circle, and you make a circle, and it was like being 6 again, which was really comforting. It felt really good. So I would do that, like, and just start to have those kind of skills and building blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And then, talk to people, because digital is really a wide field. Like there's fundraising, there's the paid stuff, there's organic stuff, there's digital organizing. There's just a lot of ways to do digital in this space.
Yeah.
And they're all great. So, I think just start on those building blocks and think about where you want to go with them. And Stefan,
Isabel,
what do you think?
No, totally. I think everything I want to co-sign what Amanda said is correct. But Isabel, looking specifically at second year of CM for 2 New York ledge races, like you already have, through your research and rapid response background, like a foot in the door. We just got to get you a digital credit on your resume, right? The 60% of jobs in politics are not listed, right? We know this. And that's why organizations like GAIN and a whole bunch of others are really, really super important, because it's really hard to get your foot in the door. It looks as if, based on what you said, you've got your foot in the door. We just got to get you that very first line. What was really helpful for me in going quickly from where I was, 5 or 6 years ago to where I am now, was honestly thinking very strategically about the titles I wanted and getting in. So I would say, 1, find a digital job. It does not matter what it is. Get it on the resume, digital associate, digital manager, content manager. It's really easy to come in through the content side. It's a little bit harder on the email side, the SMS side, the fundraising side. They usually need a little bit more skills. If you can do stuff on the content side, come in. 2, get a skill. The best way to break in is to have a skill where you can make something. So if you can make a graphic, if you can make a short video, if you are good at a TikTok, whatever it is, if you're a good photographer, whatever it is, being able to make something is literally will put you leagues and bounds above pretty much 40 or 50% of all candidates for a digital job. Most digital people come in thinking on the strategy side. There are very few people who can think strategically and make the thing to be able to execute their own ideas. So I think I would start there. Let's get something on your resume, anything digital. Let's bone up on your skills and pick something you want to major in and think of it like that. And let's get your foot in the door. I think once you get your foot in the door, you'll break into more of those digital networks and digital spaces, which is where if a job opens up, someone thinks of you specifically. So many opportunities I've had at this point in my career, I don't necessarily have to apply for anymore. which is a blessing and I'm very, very thankful for because I've built out a big brand for myself. I'm very active on social media. People know what they're getting when they get me and where my strengths are. And so I think that helps and that'll put you on the path. Cool. Awesome. Um, I'll take Christina, who's underneath it. She just finished working as a comms director for a city council campaign in Queens. Oh, that's fantastic. Go you. And before that, I was running my own production company. Curious about what's next and so glad to meet all of you. I'm super happy to meet you. I know Amanda's happy to meet you. I think the thing about what's next, if I can give you a little bit of advice on how to think about what's next, I always think of it like lily pads, right? You're on a giant lake, you're a frog, there's tons of lily pads, you got to get to the other side of the shore, right? It's not always going to be the straight line. So in intuitively understanding that you're not, it's rarely a point A to point B journey, and that you're going to be hopping from one opportunity to the next, one gig to the next. Someone working with their own production company will probably have an easier time adjusting this than others. But like that jump from the next place to the next place to the next place, eventually you build up so much momentum, it's so much easier. Do you want to take organizer memes?
Well, I was gonna just, I
Go
think
for
Christina had a follow-up question there. So I
Go
was
for
gonna
it.
jump
Read
to
it.
that. But like thoughts, opinions on skills tests and projects, especially those required in order to get an initial interview for jobs in digital. I think Steph and I are gonna disagree on this one.
Oh my God, you go first.
I think we're gonna disagree. I do think skills tests are okay to do sparingly, respectfully, quick, short. Don't give someone a 5-hour skills test and don't and like not pay them for their time. I've actually seen some organizations start to pay people to take those skills tests, and I think that's a good precedent to start doing, because you're paying. I mean, you're taking a lot of someone's time and you're taking their skills, so people should be compensated. But yeah, a short skills test, I think it's actually can be beneficial for everyone. Like it's, as someone who's been hiring recently, like it's helpful to see what people can do. And I actually think it helps people show their skills outside of what might be on their resume. If you've been building up your skills and maybe you don't have that traditional background for a job, you can show that you can still do it. I also think it just gives people a better sense of like what to expect from an organization. If you are taking that skills test, like if they give you a 3-hour skills test, they're not going to pay you. Like maybe this isn't a group that's going to respect your time and respect your job as much. So that's my case for skills tests.
Here's the thing. In theory, in a perfect world, everything you're saying makes total sense, right? I just have never seen, I find skills tests to sometimes be discriminatory in the ways they're applied. I think they hurt working people who already have jobs. I think they hurt parents who are parenting. I think they hurt people who are time poor, who do not have excess time to devote to things. I think they are rarely paid. When I was at Reform, we did do a writing test for one of the email jobs we were hiring for, but we only did it on the third round. We only did it between the top 2 candidates. And if you were good enough to be asked to write an email, we compensated those people for their time for writing that email on what we would have paid a contractor. So there is probably a time and a place and a way to do skills tests in a way that is intentional. I've rarely seen it done that way. So if an organization is doing a sloppy skills test with you, I feel like it tells you a lot about where they are, how they think about time and labor, and you should probably think of that as a red flag. I don't know if that would be like the third or fourth red flag. Like that's just a small little red flag that I would keep in mind on because I'd be nervous about what that presages for later. Hello, organizer memes. It's nice to see you in here. Sorry, I follow them on Twitter.
Me too.
I like
Hi,
their.
guys.
Hi, y'all. A very few people are good at making memes. A skill that is trending, and it takes 20 minutes to learn. I mean, very few people are good at making memes. Everybody on Twitter is shooting their shot 24/7, but there's maybe 30 things that go viral a day. So it's not a great shot to success ratio. popping down. Isabel says, thank you. Thank you so much. Of course, we want to give kudos to Miss Amy. Thank you for swinging by and saying hello. Jumping down to Matt's question. Could you describe that? And what about LinkedIn Learning? I actually don't have any experience with LinkedIn Learning. Do you, Amanda?
No, I don't.
Drop in the chat a link or something we can check out after this is over with. I would love to have a conversation about that. And if you have any other comments, questions, thoughts, belief, or praxis you want to drop in the chat, feel free to do so. I want to riff with Amanda on how do we create better environments for people to get into digital and to stay? Because I don't know what you're seeing, but so many of my digital friends are facing burnout. They're mid-career digital people who are literally getting burnt out on 4 years of online warfare. So how are you thinking about that stage of people's careers as managers and making sure that those are smooth for them?
I mean, it's a great question. It's a huge problem. I feel like people are leaving, and sometimes I don't even blame them because things have been rough. I mean, there's a couple things. I think it starts with hiring enough people to do a digital job. I think when digital broke into the scene, it was like, we have a digital person, and that digital person is a fundraiser, they're a content creator, they're a comms person, they're a research person sometimes, they're finding opposition tweets, whatever, they're a field person, they're an organizer, they're a political person. You have to do everything. You literally had to do everything, and that's a recipe for burnout. It's a recipe for people not getting valued and having to do too much
controversial. I don't know if I can say something controversial on that point.
I mean, I already had my hot take on skills tests, so go for it.
Everything you said is right. There was that era where everybody in digital had to know how to do everything, and that was not sustainable. And I'm glad that they're taking it seriously, and I'm so glad that there are so many more. All of that, yada yada yada, is true. I don't mean to yada yada, but et cetera, right? Sure. But there was also something to be said about avoiding hyperspecialization. The number of people I know who are I'm sorry, I just do SMS, or I just do email and SMS, and that's all, and they're not able to think outside of those parameters. It feels very limiting. I feel very lucky that I came up in an environment where I kind of was expected to learn everything because I'm just a generalist. And so I'm able to walk into rooms and think this video might do really well and be promoted on these platforms. Let's put this in this email. Being able to, because having run SMS, email, and content productions at a bunch of different stages, I'm able to think outside traditional boxes, or those boxes I feel people are being put into. So yes, I don't want people to get burnt out because they don't have the support they need, but I also just want to jump in and say, don't hyper specialize, because it makes it harder for you to then think and jump across fields.
I would agree with that. And I think it's incumbent upon managers also, if you have a department that's large enough that you do have people doing really specialized things, think about that, bring them up, read them in on other conversations, and make sure that they don't get into this little narrow silo. You can learn a lot through osmosis. You can learn a lot just by being in the room, being on those calls. I think that's a really important thing. And I think we just need more staff. We just need to hire more digital people.
Everybody, digital needs to sit at the head of the table. I'm still waiting for the first campaign manager for a presidential race on the Democratic side to be digital. But before we go down another rabbit hole, I want to pause for a second. People in the chat, we have a special guest who was supposed to be here earlier, but just got here. But it's fine. We're happy she's here. Miss Mariana Castro. Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How's everyone doing today? Thank you for having me. Sorry, y'all, my last call finished at 4. I'm a little late for a Friday, but it's all right.
We're just happy you're here.
Of course, thank you. And I see Organizing Memes is here. I'm a huge fan.
Anyway, Organizing Memes is a celebrity. Anyway, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got here?
Of course. So I'm currently in Florida right now. Most of my career has been in Florida. I am an immigrant from Peru. So I wasn't born here. Kind of got into politics per se through immigration, through a local bill here in Florida to get undocumented students in state tuition. So that kind of merged into like legislative work. And then I just happened to pick up graphic design and like social media through organizing, because when you are organizing like on the ground with like immigrant rights organizations and all these other orgs who are like small by mighty and like don't have the capacity to hire those folks, you just pick up and learn. And so that's what I did way back when digital was definitely not a thing. And somebody just like provided me with this opportunity, like you should really apply. And I had run at that point social media for a couple of members, candidates, and state legislators. So I kind of went from advocacy to legislation to digital right before 2020. And I was able to learn so much. I was with the Florida Democratic Party, and then with the Biden campaign, and then with Georgia campaign. And now I'm with Building Back Together, which is a nonprofit that advocates on behalf of the president's agenda. So we have a massive digital program. And yeah, that's just a little bit about me. And let me know, like, what is the current topic of discussion? We'd love to jump in.
I think we're talking about how do we avoid burnout, especially in like when you're in the middle of your career and it's just you've been in it for a little bit. How do we, one, avoid burnout ourselves, two, avoid burnout in the people we manage and like in our staffs as managers or mid-career professionals ourselves?
Yeah, and I think, and I heard y'all talking like right while I was coming in about like being mindful of like when you apply, how are they treating you, right? Like, are they going to pay you for this? So BBT, it's sort of fairly new. We're a little less than a year old. We were put in like right after the American Rescue Plan was passed in February. And like I was really impressed. So it was like so intimidating. But they were like super helpful. They actually did not ask me, like I applied to so many other jobs that were paying so much less, and they were asking me to do so many exercises, and BBT was just like, give us like previous work that you've done, like previous toolkits, previous YC, what would you do? What are you envisioning for your digital program? And I think in terms of burnout, and this happens obviously all the time, especially as we're myself and like our team working to pass the Build Back Better Act, which is just keeps going month to month. Like taking a step back and realizing like not everything's a fire, right? And I try to have that mindset. And I know my boss is really good at that, and she understands. Again, like not everything's a fire. Like what can we put for the next day? Understanding if we're getting like a big ask, like if somebody way above us is asking for something, like and other items have to stop, like they're not gonna get done. Like I'm also not gonna like work until 8 p.m. to, do extra stuff that was not flagged ahead of time. And I'm really good about that with people that I manage, because I don't, if I'm not going to do it, I don't expect that from other folks, right? So I think it's also about like team culture. Like I've definitely worked, and I think, especially as you're starting off your career, definitely worked with organizations who maybe like don't absolutely love like the way they treat their employees. And it goes from everything like from campaigns to nonprofit. And thankfully, like with BBT, team culture is very big. Like we're very like center around what we do, and I have the freedom to do a lot of digital programming. And it's also like my job is not things that I hate doing. Like I love everything that I do every single day. I have the freedom to create all these digital programmings, from like an influencer program to news boosting to like all these other things, paid ads, Snapchat ads, that like, while it's definitely like heavy lifts, it's also very rewarding. But I do try to be like mindful of like what needs to get done today versus what can get done on Monday, right? Like especially as we're wrapping up on Friday, like realizing if I send an email now or send something now, it's literally not going to make a difference because people are already gone. And I should just probably like wait until Monday morning to do it.
We're talking about boundaries. We love a healthy boundary. That's really great and really smart to be thinking about, especially like, are we contributing to cultures of burnout? Angelica's got a really wonderful question. Do you want to read it, Mariana? Am I saying your name correctly?
Mariana, yeah. Honestly, like my family doesn't call me like either of those things. So it's just like, I know some folks pronounce it like Mariana. Like I don't really have a preference, to be honest. Maybe I should. What's the easiest way to build a portfolio when you've not done a digital campaign? And what sort of materials should I be creating?
Oh, wow. Amanda, do you want to go?
Sure. This is actually my favorite thing. I mean, make memes, make videos, make graphics. If you see something that you like from a campaign that you would have done better, do it better yourself. Try it out. I really think, like, especially when it comes to video work, like when I look at portfolios, I don't care if it was done for a campaign or if it was done in your free time. It shows your skill, and I think that that's great. Um, I like when I've been unemployed in different parts, like I spend that time making some of the dumbest videos I think anyone will ever see, and some good ones. Um, but seriously, like it helps build your skills, but it shows what you can do. So I would just make stuff. I would be like, if I was a campaign responding to this, what would I do? And just make that video. If there's an outrageous headline and it spikes an idea in your head of like, Ron Johnson said another stupid thing and you want to make a little video about it, just make a video about it and put it on your portfolio.
That's I also want to take that a step further. Sorry, just because I always try and take things to excess. I love a boom and a boop. I love a little bit of extra seasoning on top. So yes, make the thing. But like Angelica, what issue motivates you the most? Whatever that issue is, if it's childcare, if it's healthcare, if it's COVID, if it's the economy, if it's immigration, whatever that issue is, create your own digital campaign for it. Like literally just go and start the Twitter account, go and start the Instagram account, and start your own campaign. One of the most interesting things that happened during Pete Buttigieg's campaign are all the people who are Team Pete, who are like chefs for Pete, friends of Pete, astronaut, just like literally people creating their own, like literally whatever. If you could think of a subgroup of people in the world, they had their own Pete account, and they ran those accounts as if they were campaign affiliated. They ran them as if they were organizing spaces for the campaign to do that work, and extensions of the brand. Angelica, this is the moment, the most similar moment to this in history is the invention of the printing press. Like, in terms of your ability to create your own content, to create your own portfolio, to not have to wait for someone else's permission to get on their platforms. Like Amanda said, I don't care when I'm looking at something if you made this video for Johnson & Johnson, or if you made it for Joe Biden, or if you made it because you were bored on a Thursday night and were watching The Bachelor. If it's good, it's great. And so I'm seriously here for it. That is a reason. Yes, the Markeyverse is a really great example of this. Like, oh, it's such a good example. Oh, those kids were so talented.
And I would add, oh, sorry, you can finish.
No, go for it. I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, on that same note, it's like building your own portfolio, like who you are in online environments. Like honestly, people were sending me digital job descriptions before I had a digital job, and it was literally because like people thought I was hilarious on Twitter, and like and it was like, as Amanda said, like creating your own stuff. Like I remember redesigning something that an organization had made to include like Latinas on their graphic because they didn't include it, and like it went viral. Like influencers were like sharing it and like tagging me, and it's just like building that for myself, building your own brand, right? Like what we call it. Same with folks, like you can build your own brand on issues. You can also build your own brand on platforms. So when it came time for me to hire digital organizers for different platforms for the Florida Democratic Party, we had like obviously tons of candidates. The candidates that we particularly hire were because they had built a brand and of themselves in a platform. And like, while sometimes, it's like, oh, TikTok is super cringy, but like it demonstrates that you're comfortable making that content. And our TikTok organizer, Ali, she's huge. Y'all probably have seen her. She did a wonderful job, and like she stood out because we were able to look at her page and be like, if she can make this for herself, she can make this for like FDP. And it grew. We had like over 10,000 followers when she made our TikTok account in June. Yeah, so I was hiring like May. So like by June, we had like 10,000 followers, and that's huge. And I think she had maybe done, I don't think she actually had done on a different digital job. This might've been her first or second digital job. And I think something really important to also point out is that a lot of folks who hire digital are obviously like maybe on the younger side. And like, as someone who hires for digital jobs, like I wouldn't turn down somebody just because they've maybe never had a lot of digital experience, because digital is so new and folks are just starting to get into it. And it's more like, are you passionate about it? What do you envision? Like, can we give you the tools to create what you want to create, right? So it goes both ways.
We have a huge fan of Allie in the chat, by the way.
Yeah, we all are huge fans of Allie.
Do I know Allie? I don't know if I know Allie. All right, I'll follow on Twitter after this is over with. If you have any questions or thoughts about career, like specific, drop them in the chat. We'd love to answer them. I want to kick it over to Amanda a little bit just to talk about, how do you plan your career? Were you intentional about the next steps and where you want to go? And like, do you have a 5-year plan for Amanda, or are you more what comes, what happens, and go with the flow?
It's a mix. I really feel like part of me, I told my story, but like part of me fell kind of ass backwards into this, and that's okay. And that's, I found something that I really like to do and think I'm decent at, and that's great.
You're very
being modest.
You're like very talented, but okay, keep going.
I was just, sorry, I had to go fishing for a second. Yeah. No, but I sort of fell into it, but then once I kind of figured out what I liked, I didn't always know what the next step was going to be, but I always tried to ask myself, like, what I liked most about what I had just done, and like, how can I do that, and how can I do more of it and grow more there. So like, when I was coming out of New Mexico, I did not know what I wanted to do next. I really, really, really didn't. But like, I knew I liked being part of a campaign and getting to like not like touch a lot of different pieces of it. And so I ended up at the D Trip as like the regional digital director for the Mountain West Great Plains. And in that role, like I got to deal with 12 different campaigns, and a couple of them lost, but that's okay. But I got to work with them on their organic stuff, on their fundraising, on the paid piece. And I knew that I wanted to kind of expand there too. And then coming out of that job, I looked back and I was like, wow, the thing I really liked here was the paid piece. I loved doing the digital like persuasion, the mobilization. I loved it all, but that was my favorite thing. So like, okay, let's take that. Where can I go do this? Where can I go build this skill set up even more? And so that's kind of how I ended up here, where, I think I might be a little bit unique in that I'm a digital director who doesn't touch really any digital fundraising, and I don't do a lot of organic stuff. I'm like fully doing paid media, and that's what I wanted to do. So like, it's not some great plan that I've laid out, but I tried to be like a little bit intentional, thinking through like, what do I want to do more of? What do I want to learn more of? But now I have no idea what I want to do after this. So that's okay. I'll figure it out.
Not a little bit though. We're still pre-cycle. You gotta keep going.
Yeah.
Miss Mariana, how are you plotting your career? How do you also had people outside of your life saying you should be in digital before you even knew, right? You've had this sort of very fast career thus far. How are you thinking and plotting your next step and your moves?
So funny enough, I think about this all the time because I'm a DACA recipient. I try not to stress about a 5-year plan because my DACA only extends for 2 years. So I only really plan for like maybe 2 years, because you just never know what can happen in 5, right? So I try to just think about where I want to go next, just like my next stop. I've also switched from like advocacy to like legislative to digital. So just, as a note, you can always go into digital, even if that's not your background. And actually had like our comms associate who didn't like digital that I worked with when I first came on. And then I started creating all these programs, bringing her in. And now she's like, I want more digital, right? Like, and now she's growing in this space, and I gave her the tools to do that. And now she's like, let's do this and let's do that. And let's create a TikTok account for BT. But yeah, like I've mentioned before, like when I was doing lech work, I was definitely with an org that I like didn't love, but I knew that like their board were like super nice and their board had like a lot of power or whatever. So I'm like, I definitely want to like see through this. But I knew it was like after legislative session, I'm gone. I want to go into the presidential campaign. I want to go to presidential campaign. And what really helped me there, it's like the network that like telling your mentors, I'm like, my next step, I want to do this. By this time, I want to be here. I want to, maybe instead of doing legislative, go back into political coalition building, maybe even go into digital, blah, blah, blah. And I had a lot of those conversations during legislative session. So when session ended, people were in fact being like, oh, I remember you heard like you were looking for a job. Here it is. Like, or I remember you wanted to like go on next step. So I'm a huge fan of like letting kind of like manifest your way into your next career by like letting folks know what you want to happen. That also happens a lot when a campaign ends. When the Biden campaign ended, we had a lot of folks looking for jobs, right? And every time I would like when especially organizers who I don't think we do enough for, and like I don't think we transition them well into like other roles. A lot of them were like, asking me like, have you heard of anything? Have you heard anything? Like kind of put them on a list, and was like, every time I get something, just push them out. Or like every time I saw a tweet, like organizer means to like tweet out like job descriptions, whatever, I'm like sending them out constantly, like the White House like fellowship program, like sending out to folks who I knew would maybe benefit from it. But yeah, like right now I kind of like know what I want to do. Like, let's say like for 2022 2024, right? Like I try to stay a cycle ahead in terms of like what I want to be. But that's it. I don't definitely try to stress myself out with like a longer path. Maybe it's because like maybe not been doing this for long enough, but it's also like as a doctor recipient, it's just not like I can only really think 2 years ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of worked also if you're in college, thinking about like what fellowships you want to do them and when. So when I was like younger in college, I was like, oh, I want to do all this like fellowships, internships. And a lot of folks were like, one of my mentors was like, do them your senior or junior year so that you can land a job. And then like right after college or during your last year, so you can actually take the job. Because if you are doing if you're taking like a huge fellowship in DC, like your sophomore year, and you're offered a job, you have to go back to college, right? So that's always like an advice when you're planning it out, when you're planning things out and you're like in college, like thinking how that's going to affect you. I was definitely offered a job to run the district for a senator in Miami, like my junior year, and went on to my senior year. And then I had to leave because I had to go back to University of Florida, who would not let me take my physics lab online. And so I left and I, came back, but it's just like being mindful of like your personal life and how that impacts you. Like if you want to have kids, what does that look like? Right. And like making sure that it all fits in well with what you're trying to do. And obviously like you can 100% have a life in politics. I think we don't talk about that enough. Like you can 100% take your long vacations. I just came back from Napa, and again, like setting up those boundaries, making sure that like you, and I know it's hard, especially if you're early in your career, but later in your career, making sure that team culture, it's important to whatever team you're joining.
Can you go into the Napa thing a little bit? Because that sounded really great.
Yeah, I just came back from Napa. Well, I did it in November. I went to Napa with my boyfriend, and it was lovely. And I had told my team I'm gonna be gone, and literally like.
Did you actually? Were you gone? Were you actually offline?
Yeah, no, I was. Well, okay. So to be fair, I was actually offline. And we passed a bipartisan infrastructure deal.
Okay. Then you can come back online. Yeah.
And then they needed the graphic edited because we were not expecting that. So I quickly did it. I had left it on Canva for folks to like edit it while I'm gone, and I quickly did it and sent it out. But aside from that, I did not come back. I had clear boundaries. I wrote like a huge memo of like, do not reach me unless like you actually brought the website. Like.
I am not available. There is no number to reach me. Good luck. I think in terms of I'm an ultra planner. I'm like 5 years ahead. And so when I left Hillary Clinton's campaign, I drove from Detroit back to Los Angeles and had like, what am I doing with my life? Oh my God, whatever. And I knew I really liked digital. And so in 2016, I said, in 2020, I want to be Battleground State Digital Director for whoever the nominee is. And so everything I did between that was like, all right, I'm going to need this level of skills. I need to be able to do this. I need to do digital at multiple levels. So that's why I went mayoral race, Senate primary, state party, presidential primary. I jumped those races particularly because I was trying to get very specific skills to get that one job. I kind of overshot it a little bit, but like that's how I thought about that. And then right now I'm in the phase where I want to be campaign manager for the Democratic nominee whenever, so whenever that's possible. So now I'm in the phase of my career where I'm building the skills I would need to be a really good campaign manager at the national level. And so like that's how I'm taking and thinking about it. So I'm super, super intentional about opportunities, about skills building, about educating myself, and about like being really clear, because even if I did not, spoiler alert, end up being Battleground State Digital Director for Joe Biden, but because I've been so intentional in building up the skills for that type of job, I got something of a similar quality that made me happy. So being super thoughtful for me was like, as a worrier and a person with anxiety trying perpetually to be chill, it was like super necessary for me. Matt, your question, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna bring up a good point in terms of like skill sets. Like I told my boss, we had our end of year check-in like yesterday, and she was like, what other skill sets do you want? Because we were able to grow like our influencer program, news boosting, all these digital programs. But I was like, I want to do more paid media. And that was like my request, right? Like my personal growth, like that's like something that I want to learn. And I think folks should be very vocal about like, what do you want to learn from your employers as well? So that you can get to like those next jobs, right? Like Stefan said.
Totally. Matt, if I have a separate account on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram for what I care about, but not an account towards a specific issue, etc., mainly justice progressivism, does it need to be towards a specific issue? It honestly doesn't. Matt, if you just want to start an alternate account where you just like create your portfolio work around issues you care about, you should, and you can, right? I have 4 alternate accounts, one of which is alternate but public. It's not Stefan Smith. But the other ones are I'm just like creating memes and creating stuff and testing out language. So like do what you need to do to get your stuff out there, and then figure out and think about how you're going to present it to employers when you try and put it in your portfolio. I do backpacking vacations. They are great because there is no service. Really, honestly, Katie, that's super smart. I like to go to the desert. I did a month in Palm Springs this year, and it was like a brilliant and amazing, but also horrible cell reception. Are there any other questions or thoughts that we can address for you around career? This has been a really wonderful discussion. Going once to the chat. Going twice. All right, I want to shut us down by having a quick closing conversation of what advice would you give yourself if you could at the very beginning of your career? You go back to the very beginning of your career, you can tell yourself one piece of advice. What do you tell yourself?
Oh, mine's going to be so corny.
I love corny. We love corny.
This is digital. Okay. We love corny.
I know. It's not even that digital specific. It's just like, whatever. I mean, I would tell myself to bet on myself. It's something someone said to me actually just a couple months ago, and I wish I'd heard it like 6 years ago. Like, go for it. Bet on yourself. Like, go for that harder job. Like, believe in the content you're making. Stand by it. Bet on it, bet on your instincts, go with them. I think the things I regret are the things that I didn't say or the things I didn't fight for. I can't think of anything I regret where I like stood up and said something and got shot down. I only regret like thinking it, kind of keeping it to myself, and then, I was right and I didn't say it, or I was right and we did the wrong thing or whatever. I just regret when I didn't speak up and I didn't fight for my programs or my work or what I believed was right, or myself when I was in the job searching process, where I, didn't fight as hard for a job, or I accepted it when someone told me like I'm not really that qualified for it. And I think you just have to bet on yourself. Like I had a job interview once where someone just directly was like, I just don't think you're qualified. And like I just had to say, you know what? Here's why I am. I mean, they were probably right, but I mean, it doesn't matter.
That's very rude.
It was fair. I mean, I didn't have the typical background, and that's fine. I did get the job. But like, yeah, I just think that's what I wish I had done even earlier, was just bet on myself.
That's really wonderful. We love Courtney. Mariana, what advice would you give your younger self starting out in this?
That's really interesting because I actually don't think I've ever answered that question. But I would say, like, and this is even more corny. I would definitely say, like, follow your intuition and like your heart. I have actually, after I took my first digital job, I was like, maybe I want to go back to legislative and political. So I did go back last year. Like, I did digital, but then I went back to the political team for Biden. And then I was like, I kind of like don't like this. So I came back to digital, and it's been great ever since, right? And also trusting that like everything's kind of like you're gonna end up where you are meant to end up. So just take and apply to whatever it is that you feel like it's right. I took like a fellowship in Berkeley because at some point I was like, I am a neurobiology major, graduate from the University of Florida. Has absolutely nothing to do with my major, but I was like, was too far along into it when I decided I wanted to do politics. I was like, how do I like merge like biology and like medicine and politics? So I did like healthcare, labor oriented fellowship with Berkeley, and I loved it. I had a great time, and I definitely made me realize that I did want to go back into like politics and immigration and whatever. But even of those 3 months, like even if it was just like a little fellowship for 3 months at Berkeley, like I had a great time. Met some of my dearest friends. Visited Napa tons of times to see it's like an hour away. Developed my love for wine. And yeah, so I think definitely like betting on yourself the same way and like trusting your instinct. So many times, even at this like at my age, which like, okay, I'm 27. I'm like, don't know what folks consider that, whatever. But it happens all the time where I'm like, should I say this at a meeting or not? Like Amanda was talking about. And I've gotten to the point where like, YOLO, like it's going to come out.
It's the
right
thing you're gonna do.
Super known on my job for like, oh, Mariana is just like straight up. And like everybody, it's like, oh, she's going to tell us the truth. And I'm like, yeah, like, what do you have to lose, right? If somebody says no, so they said no, and then you move on. Nobody's going to remember, I promise.
Yeah, that's such good advice. All right. Mine is like not corny. Mine's like super. This is like the problem I have where like I wish I could be that because I'm just like Slytherin in the back of my head. And so I think my advice would be like play the lottery and hear these numbers. But I think outside of that time travel advice, I think I would tell myself, you're good at this. I think I spent a lot of time early on in my career looking at other people. Like I knew, like I was like one of those people who like, oh, I know all the digital people. I still know all the up and coming digital talent. I know where they are. I know where I would rank them. But like I was looking at other people, and I was like measuring myself against people who had way more years of experience, who had done internships that I hadn't had the opportunity to do, who were just in different places than me. And I was feeling like, am I enough? Are my ideas enough? Am I good enough? And I think I would tell myself, one, there are always going to be people who think you're not good enough. Ignore them. And then I think my second piece of advice is like the only person you really have to like live with every day is you. So just like be happy, be ethical, live up to your own values, and like you'll be fine. I think everything else would take care of itself from that. This was like a super nice, like heartwarming thing at the end.
On top of what Stefan said, I do like you just reminded me of something. You are not lucky, like you are worth it. Like I spent such a high, like so many years thinking I just got lucky. And when I got asked to move from digital to a director level for the political team for Biden, I was like, oh, like I'm so lucky. In the Hispanic community is also very like oh my gosh, like you're so lucky. But then I was like, no, like there's no way, it's impossible for you to be lucky so many times. Like those are your accomplishments. And I just wanted to mention that because what you said, Stefan, like kind of reminded me of that, right? Like where you are and like you are there because you did it, not because someone like prayed over it.
100%. I don't believe in imposter syndrome. I've met too many people. I have met presidents and I've been on all these campaigns. I've met the Princess of Greece. I've been in so many rooms with so many people who are dumb.
What a flex.
I'm sorry. I'm not saying the Princess of Greece is fine. Theodora was perfectly nice. What I mean is like, I can't believe in imposter syndrome anymore because I've been in too many rooms with too many dumb people who are not talented, who got there through other means or through nepotism, or they know the campaign manager or they're whatever. I've been in too many of those rooms now to be like, oh my God, I don't belong in this room. Absolutely not. You belong in any room you walk into, period. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We're so happy you came to this. We're so happy we could be here. Amanda, you want to drop your Twitter handle real quick if people want to follow up with you?
Sure. My Twitter handle is just my name, at Amanda Ash.
I am the Stefan Smith on Twitter.
My ad of Mariana, I'll just spell it out, MarianaLesandra. So it's like my first and middle name together, Mariana Alessandra.
All right, you can find LinkedIn.
That's it. You can just, I'm sorry, it's like not friendly, but I will say I have it across all platforms, and that's it. And that's really hard to do, getting your name across all platforms.
100%. I'm very lucky because I'm old, so I was able to do it before there were. The other Stefan Smith is also a mixed race, queer, Black guy who spent a lot of time in Los Angeles. And so he and I have been battling it out for every username because he's about my age for the last 20 years. And so it's fine. I'm winning. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. Again, feel free to find us on LinkedIn or feel free to find us on our social media platforms if you have more specific requests for advice.
Yeah, or just like fun comments, you know, like it's always great to chat about like anything else that's also not work. So.
Oh yeah, if you just want to vibe, we can.
If you just want to vibe, digital is just vibing, so vibe along with us.
We can't type in the chat that y'all are in, unfortunately, crew. So we'll figure out a way to distribute and find people some other way. Just Google her name. Like, yeah. All right, cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, all.